Today we're talking about everybody's favorite violent clay pigeon, that is Space Marine 2's Assault class, and how you can set it up once you yourself finally hit 4th Prestige. So let's get right into it here. Now, just real quick, I do want to throw out, when I did the leveling for this class, I was pretty much strictly playing on Lethal and Absolute. I would say that if you're not interested in playing those two difficulties in that, there are some perk changes that I would recommend to this, and we will discuss them as we go through, but just wanted to let you know that if you're taking a quick look at what the perks are set up, they are meant for more of those higher end difficulties, and if you're looking for something that's a little bit more fun, we will touch base on that. But again, just stick around and kind of watch some of that stuff because I will call it out. Now, as always, we're going to delve right into the prestige perks here right off the bat. One thing I do want to throw out is one of my main gripes about this class. It is a lot of fun. I would say, though, this is probably my least favorite class to play. And the main reason for that is just its durability. So when I was setting this class up, a couple things just to keep in mind. My main goal was to get as much damage out of the ground pound ability that I could, and also to try and help bolster just the class's defenses, because I do feel that they are a little lacking, especially for a melee class. As someone who primarily runs the bulwark, nice thing with the bulwark is you have a big metal shield to essentially block out most range damage. With the assault, you don't have that. You are a little bit more nimble, but you will burn up your ability using the jetpack to dodge stuff, so I like to try and save that for dishing out damage. But let's get right into it with all that stuff out of the way. So for the first perk I picked, I went with Dualist just because regardless of what style of melee weapon you want to go with, having an increase to your perfect parry and block window is just absolutely huge. Also, if you're a few moments late, this is going to buy you some time, which is something that I really personally enjoy just because I do love the melee combat to this game. So if I'm having a little bit of a bad day, this is a little bit of a crutch for me sometimes, but it just helps keep me alive and keeping me having fun. So I love this. Plus, if you are struggling with the melee combat, this is something that you can pick up right off the bat, and hopefully it'll help you master that. Plus, also, if you're using block weapons to get some of that extra damage, nice way to help ensure you're building those stacks for the block weapons as well. Moving on to perk 2. So this is one of the, I believe, 2 perks on here that's going to address taking damage and just trying to stay alive. So we went with Scramble Targeting, which anytime that you are surrounded by 5 or more enemies, you will take 20% less range damage. Now, one thing I want to throw out is, as soon as you hit 4, that 20% buff goes away. So it is something that I noticed quite a few times, especially with this class. It's very easy to clear out mobs. There were times where I wasn't really taking a whole lot of damage, and then it just felt like all of a sudden I was getting absolutely smacked by everything. Just something to keep in mind. That buff is only going to last while you have 5 or more enemies around you. But again, it is something that will help keep you alive, because there have been plenty of times where I've come screaming down from the sky and I've had like a Tyranid warrior try to snipe me out of the air, and this has helped keep me alive. Moving on to our third perk, again, another perk just to try and help keep us in the fight. That is Fortitude, which is going to give you a generic 15% health increase. Again, this has helped me tank some shots that normally would have knocked me or incapacitated me. And just a 15% health boost is overall very nice to have. Finally, now this one does do a little bit of trying to help keep you in the fight, but it's just an extra way to make sure that your jump pack is fully charged. It is boosted recharge. Anytime you pick up an armor boost, it will completely restore your ability charge by 100%. Now, one thing I will say, I wasn't really keeping track a whole lot if it will take you from 0 up to 2, but I can guarantee you it will at least give you 1. I do have a couple other perks on here that do help me recharge the jump pack. So again, playing on some of those higher difficulties, I wasn't always paying attention to just how many recharges I was getting off of it. Now, the only downside to this is it is extremely situational. You're only going to be able to get the benefits of this from when you grab an armor boost. Now, there is another ability on here that will pretty much give you the same benefits. However, you get it by reviving a teammate. I would honestly say whichever one you encounter more, that's the perk I would pick. For me personally, when I was doing a lot of these runs, wasn't really having to worry about teammates go down as much, so I found I was getting more use out of the boosted recharge, and overall just kind of decided that being able to have, I think I got rid of it for the 15% health increase, having that was just something that served me a lot better. Now, getting into our main packs, we're going to go, main perks, we're going to go through the core ones here quick. So the first one I grabbed was Armor Reinforcement. Non-finisher gun strikes will give you one armor segment back. Again, you are going to be doing a lot of gun strikes with this class, especially against Majoris. They're not always going to finish them off, so being able to regain some armor regardless is nice. Now again, if you are playing on some lower level difficulties, or honestly, if you're just a better player with this class than me, the other perk I would recommend would be Overcharge, which will increase the damage from charge melee attacks anytime you launch them. Moving into the second column here, I did grab Auxiliary Arsenal, which is, again, just a flat 20% damage increase to your sidearm. Main reason I grabbed this was, so this is a more melee-focused class. All you have access to are pistols for your backup weapon, and I want to get as much damage out of them as I can, especially for enemies like Zoranthropes and also the Zanger Enlightened. Just something nice to have in the background there to help you out with some of the enemies that you can't immediately smack with the giant talking stick. Now, moving in to the third column here, I did grab Knowledge of the Enemy. Main reason is it gives you a 15% damage boost against Majoris and Extremist enemies for your melee. This is a melee class. You're going to be doing a lot of it. Why not get rewarded for it? Now, moving in to the team perks, honestly, all of them are pretty good. I will be 100% honest, though. For me, I grabbed Strategic Strikes, and that was just to kind of bolster myself rather than the team. But the reason for that is because it will stack with the Knowledge of the Enemy, which, so Strategic Strikes gives everybody in the squad 20% more melee damage against Extremist and Terminus level enemies. So when you stack the two on top of each other, specifically against Extremist, you are getting 35% extra damage. And that's even before factoring in some of the other perks that we're going to be talking about pretty shortly here that will affect the damage from the ground pound. So you can actually eliminate Extremists rather easily with this class. Now, the other two perks, such as Squad Cohesion, which recharges everybody's ability 10% faster, and Proven Efficiency, which allow everyone in the squad to do 30% more gun strike damage, they're all incredibly nice. Again, if you're not having any issues with how much damage you're putting out with this class, you might find it worthwhile to pick one of the other two. Again, I was a little bit selfish with this one myself, and that's why I ended up grabbing Strategic Strikes. Now, moving into the gear slot, first perk I grabbed out of this column was Precision Strike, which gives me 100% more damage whenever I do a ground pound. However, the radius of it is reduced by 50%. Again, on some of these higher difficulties, especially with Lethal and Absolute, it's going to be extremely rare that you're going to get one-shot kills from the ground pound on Majoris, or definitely anything higher. But what this did allow was it took less rounds from a lot of my teammates or even myself before I got into ground pound range. And sometimes, again, it wouldn't immediately kill them, but there were plenty of times where it had at least incapacitated an enemy where I could immediately go into an execution. Now, again, if you're not playing on those difficulties, you might not necessarily need to run this perk. The other one I would recommend would be Smiting Angel, which is only a 10% damage increase. However, you don't have the area reduction from the other perk. Next, moving in to the 6th column here, almost wanted to say 5th blue column, but 6th actual column. I went with Zealous Blow. I think, honestly, this is the best perk in this column because anytime you get a kill with the ground pound, it restores the jump pack's charge by 10. Now, even while running this with 50% less of a damage radius, there's still a lot of times where there's plenty of Minoris enemies that are all bunched up. And you essentially get a free ground pound, and you can eliminate all of them in one pretty fell swoop. So, phenomenal perk to have. And even if you don't fully recharge it, just cutting down on the recharge time is always nice. Moving into the final column here, I did take diligence. I don't know what the hell happened there. Sorry, my brain shut off. But I grabbed diligence because, again, this is helping me get more damage out of the ground pound. Now, the downside to this is your preparation time is going to take 25% longer. Now, what I will say is the ground pound charge rate is rather quick, 25%. Really doesn't add all that much time to it. However, it does add enough time to where you really got to make sure that you're paying attention to if a sniper has you pinged or something like that. Try to get down to the ground as quickly as you can. I don't mind saying it because plenty of people got to see it when I was streaming this game online, but there were quite a few times where I got shot down right out of the sky and came crashing down without even damaging anything on the field. So even if you don't get the full charge off completely, it is still nice to have where if you're just surrounded by a group of melee enemies and you don't have to worry about snipers, you get a nice little damage increase on them. Now, moving into the signature perks, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not really impressed with any of them. I'd say just pick whichever one you like. Personally, I just kept ample ammunition because at least this was something that I felt like I was truly seeing a lot of the benefits from, which is anytime that you use the jump pack, it would automatically reload your ranged weapon. Plus, you get a 50% damage increase for 10 seconds, which is rather nice because, again, on the difficulties this class was set up for, I wasn't getting a whole lot of one-shot incapacitation on Majoris and up, but having that 50% damage boost, if they hadn't already been shot, I could shoot them myself, and they went down rather smooth after that. But, again, none of the perks in this particular column blow me away by any means. Ascension, I've noticed that on occasion it would take out a couple Minoris enemies, but I never really noticed it being something to where just the entire mob around me was disappearing. If they maybe had some damage on them, it was killing them. But again, I really didn't notice too much from it. And then with commitment, if you are using the jump pack dash a lot, this might be worth using because as long as you get the jump pack dash pulled off successfully, you get a free recharge for it. However, for me personally, a lot of times if there was something that I could dodge, I could also go up in the air and then come crashing down, dish out a lot more damage. So that's why I chose to forego this perk. Now, there is an ordeal that does require the assault to do a certain amount of jump pack dodges. When I was working on that months ago, this perk was absolutely phenomenal for that. I would recommend it for that, but nothing more. Overall, though, this is my build. Like I said, I still have a lot of fun with this class. It's just personally my least favorite to run, but it's still a hell of a lot of fun. And again, just to reiterate, this particular setup here, this is more built for playing on lethal and absolute. Feel free to make a couple changes if you have no interest in playing those difficulties. If you're playing on, let's say, average or substantial or even ruthless, you probably don't need some of these. Feel free to make adjustments as you need, but at least this gives you a good rough draft of what you're able to do with this class. But thank you as always. So next week, we're down to the final one. We're going to be talking about the big boy heavy himself, and that'll wrap up having every class prestige. But again, thank you as always, and